Hi everyone, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it. Thank you especially for those people who followed me over from the session that I delivered over there about 10 minutes ago as well, so thank you so much. So we're here now to look at, for us as L&D and HR leaders, we are now at a fork in the road, and I'm going to kind of lay some of that out for you today. I'm going to talk about what does that look like and what does that mean, and you can put that in your own context. I'm going to get you to do a little bit of a self-assessment. I'm not going to ask you to share any scores, but it will prompt some self-reflection. And that hopefully will give you some clarity in regards to, are you going to keep doing what you've always done, or are you going to think about doing something different? And that's the fork in the road that I'm talking about right here. So, one path can keep us going to the library, going to get a book out, reading the book, taking the book back, going to going to the library, getting the next book, putting the book back, continuing. And that's what we've always done when it comes to consensus and consumption of knowledge. You know, you think about onboarding programs, the feedback typically is, it was great, but there was too much stuff that I don't need for my job. We see this time and time again in L&D programs when we put leadership programs on for 12 weeks solid, and then we expect the whole application of work within the flow of work. The other thing positions us as marketers of intelligence. How can we now start to use AI and technology to understand what the skills in our organisations truly look like, how the data and intelligence can support us for that? What does that mean in regards to curating capability and truly becoming the strategic partner that the business needs us to have? My name's Erica Farmer. I'm a professional speaker, a trainer, and I'm soon to be an author on artificial intelligence. My background is 25 years in corporate L&D with some of the UK's largest brands like LV, Virgin, British Gas and Specsavers. I'm also the host of the AI for the Average Joe podcast, which is why the logo looks slightly different on the right. We're a media supporter for this year's conference. I've been talking about AI for about 4 years now, and prior to that, I was talking to leaders. This is, by the way, me at QCon talking to software development leaders about 2 years ago around trying to understand what does the future of skills mean in the context of technology, and how can technology enable us to deliver that through things like personalization of career and mobilities. It's talking about skills needed for our organizations, just not now, but the next 2 to 5 years. And lo and behold, after I did my TEDx talk in 2022, talking about reforming the digital first mindset, OpenAI brought ChatGPT to market. Who here is using ChatGPT on a day-to-day basis? Most people, or Copilot, or Gemini, or something like that. Okay, so we're using this stuff, but what we're finding, no matter what level you are in your role, that we're scratching the surface on reworking emails, writing reports, maybe writing or creating a nice little picture of our cat with a hat on. We're not really in the space here where we're becoming curators of capability, because we find that it's our mindset that's stopping a lot of this stuff. We're hearing more and more, no matter what level in the organisation, around the AI guilt. I should be using it more for different things because everybody else is using it. Or the AI shame. I shouldn't be using this because it means I'm cheating. Does anybody recognise any of those emotions that I've just talked about? A few nods in the office. Okay, great. So this is really about time as leaders for us to step up and fully embrace artificial intelligence and technology and those human distinctive skills in our organisation through an experimental mindset. And I'm going to talk more about experimental mindset in a minute. But one thing I'm going to mention is I've started working with Simply Business. Many of you might know them as a broker for business insurance. And I'm doing some work with them in regards to adoption of AI. And I was really pleased when I started working with them to understand that their exec 2 weeks ago have signed off that everybody in the organisation gets 1 hour per week AI experimentation time. 1 hour per week for every employee in that business. Now that to me sends a real signal that Simply Business are taking this really seriously. And they're also investing in the leadership capability and mindset and the practical hands-on skills to drive AI literacy but also the time to experiment and test and learn and have a go. Because in my experience, what I'm finding is the CTO, the Chief Tech Officer, or somebody in that role has been tasked in rolling out Copilot across the organisation and has committed to the board that there'll be a 90% take-up within 90 days. And then typically what happens is there isn't a 90% take-up in 90 days because we haven't supported people in the hearts and minds in what they should do, how they feel about AI, what does that mean in terms of their AI guilt and shame, and therefore are they allowed to do certain things or are they not allowed to do certain things? We know that is psychological safety. We haven't given the guardrails. We haven't given the RAG status in the behavioural framework. Red, don't use AI for this. Amber, you might want to use AI for this. Green, crack on. So it's about being really clear, but also enabling that experimentation and innovation through actually giving people the time and space, not just to feel okay about it, but physically be able to do that so they can learn and share. So that's what we're talking about. So the typical roles of the modern L&D function: we might be involved in attraction, we're certainly involved in retention in regards to people's careers and mobility. We are involved in motivation and engagement of our employees, whether that's through coaching, whether that's through learning design and delivery, whether that's through events and conferences, whatever it might be. We develop people's capabilities, typically alongside things like job descriptions, or more recently moving towards a skills-first type approach. We might create or be tasked as working with HR and operations to create a values-based culture. You might be doing listening groups, you might be doing values workshops and that kind of stuff. And that then also supports the employee and employer brand in regards to your organisation being a great place to work. And I've been in L&D for a fairly significant space in my career. I've held 4 different head of L&D roles, and that's certainly a kind of tick box for the roles and the deliverables that I was involved with during that time. I'm going to challenge you now to think about those boxes and turn around and talk to the person next to you. If I took all those boxes away right now, what would you put in there to replace the text already there? So if you had to rewrite the L&D function right now, and you had to put descriptors in each of those boxes, what would those descriptors be based on what we know and how we need to develop? Just talk to the person next to you and tell me in a minute what you think they might be. What would you switch out? What would you switch in? Okay, let me bring you back in. So what would you do? What would you switch for this? Switch in for this one. If we were to switch out motivation and engage employees, what would you replace it with? Any thoughts? Shout it out. Yep. Empowerment. Okay. Employee empowerment. Okay. Build an employer brand. What would you switch in for this? Reasons why. What's in it for me? The reasons to work here. Absolutely. Already, you've gone to more personalised examples when they've asked you to switch out the organisation and switch in the person, which is exactly what you've done. Let's put kind of a view on that. This is what I would do if I was building an L&D function from scratch. Hands up if there's anything there that came up in your discussion. Interestingly, one group. Okay, that's fascinating. And there's no right or wrong, as this is my opinion based on my expertise and research. But if I was going back into corporate as a director of L&D tomorrow, this is the stuff I would be working on. This is the stuff I would be putting in my strategy. What I'm not doing is saying AI in the middle of it. You don't even see the term on that screen. But it's all the outputs and the enablements that new technology can support. And the point I was making in the last session is, AI hasn't caused problems in regards to retention and enablement and satisfaction and growth in our organisations. But what it is doing is it's starting to shine a light on issues and cracks which have traditionally been there. Maybe culture, maybe tension, maybe politics, maybe people not applying everything that they've learned in the workplace. But what we need to do now is think about what augmented L&D looks like. How can we partner and collaborate with AI as a digital colleague? Is a blended team. What can we hand off and delegate to the artificial intelligence? And what does that mean in terms of uplifting what we do in human intelligence to deliver more value for our organisations and for ourselves? You are here right now. If you had a big sign saying you are here, that's what this slide means right here. Yes, you are a learning function. You are responsible for learning design, learning development. But actually, and who here is working on performance consulting or doing anything around the consultant space? Yeah, one person's got, 2 people have got their hands up, 3 people got their hands up. If we're not consulting around what the core business problems are in our organisation, we therefore probably don't understand them and I will struggle to deliver it. So I know when I was a head of L&D, I'd often get directors come to me, senior team come to me and say, right, we've got new managers coming into the organisation, we need a management development programme. And I would say, okay, let me go off and write one. And it'll be delivered in 3 months. And you can have as many people as you want, and I've got trainers available, tick, 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 tick. What I didn't do in my first head of an L&D goal is I say, well, that's great, but why? What's the problems we're looking to solve? What does it mean? And actually, I don't really care about measurement, because for me, learning is something that should be there anyway. It shouldn't be something we have to justify all the time. It's part of our human nature to learn and what we need from our organisations. So that performance consulting is absolutely key. And what AI now does is shine a light on what that can mean and how that can support you going forwards. And that is changing our position on being an L&D function to being an experimental mindset and innovation function, coupled with the ethics and safety practice that we need to build that psychological safety in our organisation. And you might find that you have to partner with HR, for example. You might need to partner with client compliance. I'm sure your legal team is interested in this stuff as well. But by thinking about your L&D function in a slightly different way, it forces you to consider more of a cross-organisational need and responsibility, and AI is shining a light on the fact that we haven't always done that. We tend to operate in silos rather than verticals, and that leads to things like repetitiveness, miswork, and not always understanding our key stakeholders' real problems. When I was the head of L&D at LV, head of operational training at LV, I had one stakeholder who was the director of claims in Exeter. And no matter what I did, no matter what fancy training programme, all the L&D language in the world, all of the fancy slides, all of the feedback from other leadership development programs that we've run for other part of the business, this stakeholder did not care. He was not interested because he trained his team. He didn't need operational training. And then one day, this claims director came to me and he said, Erica, are you using your printer? I said, no, why? What's happened? What's the issue? And the claims department, who's unable to print out letters to say we're going to honour your claim or not, isn't a claims department. So Les said to me, he said, Erica, I'm really stuck. My whole team's stuck. We can't print out letters to send to claimants on the policies anymore. I said, Les, take my printer. And he's like, oh my God, you've saved my life. You've made my life so easier. So sometimes it's about talking to stakeholders in regards to what that means, as opposed to rather than forcing learning and development on us. And by solving their AI problems through an experimental mindset, or solving their problems they didn't really have, and being really transparent around the quick wins that you can help stakeholders with, will get you a lot further in the door than trying to throw L&D programs down their throat. And AI, solving AI problems is a great position to do this with. So, are you truly ready for AI? Are you truly AI ready to the point where you have stakeholders coming to you with problems in your organisations and you can go and help and support them to solve those problems? Because as learning functions, we are no longer the function that's there to design and deliver a training programme. We have to be there to solve that problem. And if we're in an organisation that has an AI strategy to roll out AI or to get efficiencies through certain tasks or to enable uptake, that is our responsibility and our role to do that. But we need to first start with our own mindset. So, here's a little self-assessment from my new book, shameless plug. And I want all of you guys to do this. And I want to score yourself on each of the statements that I've put on here. So, the first statement is, I understand the basic principles of how AI works. And if you do, score yourself a 4 or a 5. If you haven't got a clue, you score yourself as a 1 and everything in between. And I'm not going to ask you for what your cumulative score is. This is more of a self-reflection exercise. So the first statement is, I understand the basic principles of how AI works. Score yourself 1 to 5. And you can do it in your head, or you can write it down, or put it on your phone, whatever you want. The next one, I can identify at least 3 areas in my role where AI is already used. Again, 1 to 5, 1 being no, 5 being yeah, completely true. I feel confident in explaining AI tools to my colleagues or stakeholders. Score yourself again. I regularly ask vendors or tech partners how AI is embedded into their systems. I'm aware of the ethical risks of using AI in recruitment, performance, or any other part of your role. And I've attended a course, read a book, or followed on updates on AI in HR and L&D. Well, you can tick that one now because you're here. So, score up your, total up your score. And this is how I would score you. You're a champion, you're curious, or you're a novice. Total it up. So if you score below 15, that's okay. You've got somewhere to go. You've got things you can start thinking about. You can have a look at a bit of a plan of action, put it on your CPD, or thinking about what are the next steps, where are the areas that I've identified that I've scored lower. If you're AI curious, great, okay, it's a good place to start, but what else can you do? What can you do next? And if you're an AI champion, you are ahead of the curve. Time to share that wealth and goodness with other people in your organisation, with your stakeholders. Think about my example of how I got my claims director on board just by giving him my printer and solving his problems. If you can solve a problem, particularly with AI, you're also showing that you're an expert in this space in regards to solving problems, but you're also ahead of the curve in regards to what AI means to your organisation. And believe me, there will be stakeholders in your organisations that will be looking to L&D and HR to play their part, particularly as you sit in the intersection between technology and people. This is the space that we play, therefore this is our responsibility. I'm not going to ask hands up of who scored what, don't worry. So we know on the surface, this feels like the golden age of AI and L&D and HR. And it's going to solve all our problems and reduce all our costs and engage people and that kind of stuff. But without a clear framework, without something that you can lean on, opportunities just become noise. People are sat in business meetings nodding away, and actually it just all goes blah, 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 because you're not pinning it to something. And a great place to start based on stakeholder buy-in is something like a little self-assessment that I gave you earlier. Just go and ask some questions about how people genuinely feel about AI, because when you engage them in regards to how they feel about stuff, they might not feel as defensive as if you're asking them if they're already using it and why are they not. So speak to people on the emotional terms. That's why I asked you about AI guilt, AI shame. Because if you guys are feeling some of this stuff, certainly your learners will be feeling this stuff, certainly some of your stakeholders will be feeling this stuff. So let's strip it back and have a human-to-human conversation. That framework I'm talking about, I'm going to go full circle again, is experimentation. And that's not optional, this is about survival now. And I guarantee if you're not talking about experimentation in your organisation, there will be some people who are experimenting with AI in your organisation, whether you like it or not. whether it's the free version, whether your organization's large language model by default is Copilot, but you walk past them in the office and they've got ChatGPT out playing around with it. We are curious, natural people, but if you don't lead in regards to what in good experimentation looks like, people will create cottage industries. And that's why Simply Business have come out and said, we are committing to this 1 hour per person per week, because it now gives people the right opportunity and permission to go and do the stuff that will quickly enable AI adoption within their organization. And if you're a leader, an L&D leader or a HR leader, go, but oh my gosh, they've not gone through our training yet, or they didn't attend this program, or they haven't read the policy, then more for you. It's still going to happen. You know, if we often are told as human beings not to do something, what's the first thing we go and do? We go and do it, right? We know this. We are people. We are L&D people. But don't just wait for the 12-month transition program. Like I said, your business will start doing it without you. You can't sit on your laurels and think, it's okay, the Chief Transformation Officer's got this in hand, or this is being led by IT, or actually, you know, we've got stakeholders in information security that we need to go and speak to, but we can't get a meeting with them for 2 months' time because the steering committee hasn't signed off the AI policy, and we haven't got it written in this kind of company font and these guidelines. All of that is procrastination. All of that is going to waste your time, and people are going to set up doing their own thing anyway. So the fork in the road is, do you choose to lead that transformation and go to the marketplace and be that curator of capabilities, or do you just keep doing what you're always doing and pumping out e-learning content and just hope that somebody engages you with an AI transformation project? Because I'm seeing that time and time again. Quick wins build credibility with stakeholders. If you can demonstrate little problems that are solved that can be scaled, specifically that sit in your stakeholders' pain points, you will build credibility. And that then builds to bigger opportunities for you to lead rollouts. If you can build that credibility in exactly what AI is going to solve in terms of those problems, you've then got use cases that will be talked about by the board, and they will then say, you are the person that should lead this for organization. Or you are the best placed person to advise the chief technology officer on what this means for our people. Don't sit downstream, the CTO to come knocking on your door saying, by the way, we've developed this LLM, we've trained it, this is our artificial intelligence policy for our organization, this is what we want people to use it for, this is what we don't want people to use it for, this is the plan, and by the way, we're going to need some training in 3 months' time. Because as L&D people, we say we hate that. That's the order taker mentality. And now more than ever, you have the ability to step up through quick wins, through test and learn, through experimentation, through innovation. And if you're sat there going, oh, but I don't know what I could do with this, then think about what are those problems your stakeholders have got, or what are those tasks that you've got in your team that you can map AI against, and how can you incrementally get benefit from that? And that might even be your team goes home half an hour early and spends that time with their family. It doesn't have to be company KPIs. It's all about the AI it's all about the dividend that AI gives us, and that's an individual thing. So if you want a bit of a roadmap, here you go, feel free to take a photo. Clarify what the problem is, track the opportunities, drive focus on what that means for an organization, augment and change, test and learn. Really understand where your organizational readiness is and feed into that, feed into the policy, feed into the strategy based on what you've already learned. Decide what that means. Understand the safeguarding and guardrails around your organization, but operate within that rather than using that as an excuse not to do it. Review, test, share, grow. All of this stuff is effectively your continuous improvement cycle, just put it in a different graphic. But make it visible. Go and tell stakeholders what the wins are. Go and tell them how you can solve their problems. Because they'll be grappling with the AI guilt and the AI shame. They'll probably be getting the same pressure from the board that you are. So why wouldn't we have an abundance mindset this? And rather than actually, I'm going to go and deliver this training or design this training, think about what business value looks like and how can I go and solve my stakeholders' problems. And then when you do need to put people on training, when I needed the claims team to go through business transformation training, Les was stood right next to me and he said, crack on, Erica, you can have all the time that you want. So this is partnering, this is problem solving, this is stakeholder management. So 3 things you can go away and do tomorrow with an AI experiment. Create an AI-enabled onboarding assistant, go into ChatGPT, go into the store, into GPTs, and search HR. And there's already one there. There's a template you could use. You don't need to code. You don't need to build an agent. Test and learn. Have a play with it. Understand what that means. Pilot skills gap analysis with your LLM, asking it to become a skills intelligence platform. You will act as a skills intelligence platform, taking into account this market data, these geographies, this kind of information. In my last session, I gave a prompt for what that looks like. You can go and do that on ChatGPT or Copilot today. Ask it to act as a skills intelligence platform. And then if you've got something like Zoom or Microsoft Teams and you've got people coaching over Teams or doing business development conversations over Teams or performance conversations over Teams, with their permission, take the transcript, analyze that, and understand what kind of conversations these people are having. So if you're working with salespeople, but some people in the sales team for some reason are struggling to get the deal in the relationship, it might be that they're not asking for the business. It might be that they're not closing or handling objections properly, but they'll say to you, yeah, of course I'm handling all the objections. Of course I am. It's what I do. I'm a salesperson. But when you see it in black and white for the transcription, actually there might be an area where that person's not asking for the business at all. And that's your skills gap analysis right there. So these are the technologies that are available to you right now. You all put your hand up and said, yes, Erica, I'm using ChatGPT. So I'm going to hold you accountable for that. Most of you will have Zoom or Teams. So this isn't about the big scary stuff. This is about getting started, experimental mindset. How do I feel about AI and where are the quick wins? Okay, I've got a few minutes left. Just to summarize this stuff, I'm talking about true strategic partnership here. I'm talking about not being a L&D function, but being a value-added part of the business that's driving positivity, value, and impact to what you do. Because we all say we want to do that in L&D. But sometimes we get hung up on compliance training and leadership management programs and all the stuff. And by the way, I'm not throwing the baby out the bathwater. All of that stuff is important as well. But what I'm asking you to do is change the way you think about your priorities. Pitch without losing trust. That's the piece where I say talk to your stakeholders around the problems that you can help them solve. And at first, that might not feel like it's any of your business at all. But if you're someone who's testing and learning with AI, you can say something like, let me show you how I would go about that using artificial intelligence. I'm happy to share with you this prompt that I've used for you to have a go and see if we can solve that problem together. That's the partnering piece. And share the win. Don't be bashful. Share. Talk about this stuff. Make sure the exec know what you're doing and the impact that it's having to build that experimental mindset and to innovate and change. So, I ask you again, are you going to go down the path of content libraries? Are you going to go down the path of doing what you've always done? Or are you going to go down to the new path of marketplaces of intelligence, creators of capability, and really being strategic partners? This is the fork in the road that I'm talking about. And hopefully, following today's session, it's got you to start to think about where you are, how you feel about AI, and what does that mean for your organisation as well. Thank you very much.